The Chicago Republican Party is filing a lawsuit over these walkouts from the Chicago Public Schools. And to tell us why is the chairman of the Chicago GOP, Chris Cleveland, and also joining us is Jitu Brown, the national director for the Journey for Justice Alliance, one of the organizers of the walkout. Gentlemen, it's great to see both of you. Let's start with you, Chris. The lawsuit has not yet been filed, I understand, although you did file a complaint. What is the beef? I mean, these kids are just organically getting together and expressing their First Amendment views.
Well, that's not exactly what the situation is, though. The nature of our complaint with the Inspector General's office was that these teachers and administrators in the public schools were using taxpayer dollars to advance a political agenda. Now, that's not just distasteful. It's not improper. I mean, it's not only improper, it's illegal, too. It's contrary to Chicago Public Schools rules. It's contrary to Illinois state law that says that you can't just write taxpayer checks to political movements. And, it's arguably a violation of their First Amendment rights because there's kids who are coerced into doing this who may not agree.
G2, I understand that the children who did not want to take part in the walkout were instructed they could gather in a classroom. They didn't have to hear it. They didn't have to go to it. But classes were canceled during this period of the school day. Why is that good for the kids today who need, frankly, more classroom time and more focus on their studies?
I think that we have to remember that one of the things that education has to be is relevant. And so if we talk about what makes good education, that means a curriculum that's rigorous, a curriculum that's relevant, and a curriculum that engages young people in a way that's creative and in a way that inspires them. So I think when young people have real-world issues about like being afraid of being killed in their neighborhood or being afraid of being killed with someone bringing an automatic weapon into their school, that it is not about a partisan issue. It's about young people, and I know the young people that I engaged with who were passionate about letting their voice be heard during this time. There are young people from my community who have been working on issues like this for years, and I think, have not received the support from mainstream media that young people from Parkland received. But I know that this was not an issue of at least from the young people and the people that I've engaged with, this is not about young people being parroted or manipulated by adults. I think that's kind of insulting. We have to remember that, there was a time when, you couldn't host a show like this. There was a time when I couldn't sit on a TV channel like this. And there was young people who pushed the establishment to say this is what the moral issue of the day must be.
So we cannot. Right. So, G2, I hear what you're saying. My concern is, and my point in the Angle was, the idea that this is just a bunch of students getting together and this was all student-driven. Well, to some extent, there were some students, obviously, have heartfelt views. I get it. It's not about whether you have the right to protest. It's about whether schools should be used to advance a political agenda, and it is a political agenda, that a lot of parents and a lot of students do not feel comfortable with and feel excluded from. And I don't think, G2, you probably would have been all that thrilled if the march was an anti-abortion march, that students were encouraged to attend. There were things sent around like this email from an elementary school teacher in Chicago yesterday. Feel free to join in the morning from 10 to 11 a.m. outside for a walkout and informative action. You are more than welcome to spread the word, to tell family, friends, and the media. Sarah Fowler, middle school literacy teacher, Jonathan Burr Elementary School. I don't think if that agenda was a conservative agenda or a pro-life agenda, would have all this woo from the mainstream media interviewing them, putting them on TV. Do you think that?
Well, I will say if you thought that I was going to come on this show and say that this is a Republican issue, then you're mistaken. I think that the issue, the failure to address the gun violence in the United States is a bipartisan failure. Is it a failure by Democrats or Republicans? So for those who stood outside with young people today, the work is not finished.
But you didn't answer my question. G2, you didn't answer my question. Okay. You said it wasn't a Republican. I'm not even saying it's a Republican thing. I am saying it's political. And if this were a massive push for a pro-life rally that was nationwide, pushed by the Catholic Church or other organizations that weren't political, I do not think would have groups allied with the teachers' unions and other organizations cheering the students on. I think they'd say, well, a lot of kids don't agree with the pro-life thing. A lot of kids are pro-choice. Why would you push that? There have been 55 million babies who were not born in the United States because of that movement. That's a lot of bloodshed. But I don't think that a lot of people would be thrilled about that. So, Chris, you want to file a lawsuit, perhaps. It does seem to be contrary to the policies that I've read in the Chicago School District. But nevertheless, this is a very popular movement. I think G2 is right. Gun violence is a big problem in Chicago. We've had a lot of lives lost. And there are a lot of different solutions, not just grabbing guns, but there are a lot of different solutions that are being embraced by students.
Well, I don't know that that's actually the case. I mean, what I'm seeing here is coercion. I'm seeing that the kids are being encouraged to fill out these posters and go out and protest and urge their congressman to vote for stronger gun laws. And this business that they're not being coerced is absurd. I mean, kids in our elementary school, I actually became attuned to this because I received an email from our principal at our elementary school. Kids ages in grades 5 through 8 were being herded outside to do this. Here we get 10, 12-year-old kids who are told that if you don't want to do it, you can go sit in a room by yourself, and all your friends are going to be outside doing this. I mean, this is straight out coercion, and it's straight out a left-wing agenda. So, I mean, it's crystal clear that it's paid for by taxpayer dollars, and this is improper.
G2.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an insult to young people to say that in order for them to raise their voice in a way that is passionate, that is clear, that somehow they have to be manipulated by adults. I remind you that it was young.
Come on.
G2, they're kids.
What 10-year-old kid is going to be able to know how to argue this or even understand the issue? They don't understand this issue.
See, and I think that, so I will say this. I'm not in every classroom, but I will say this. The overwhelming majority of young people that you see speaking around the country, the young people in Chicago who walked out of their schools and then went to the mayor's office on a Democrat.
Aren't they supposed to be in school?
Yes, and that is civic engagement.
Aren't these kids supposed to be getting skills to get jobs and to be independent adults? I mean, there's plenty of time for political activism, G2.
And civic schools are where young people are together. So I'm not advocating for like daily walkouts, but I think when issues become critical, and young people are screaming to us, whether it is through gun violence in the street or whether it's through gun violence in their schools, and we are suffering from inertia, it is not our place to say whether they are correct or incorrect.
Well, it's our place. Actually, G2, it's actually our place. You know, wait a second. Are you saying that adults do not have a role in guiding the actions of young people? Is that what you're saying?
I never said that. What I said was that when adults have failed to address quality life issues for young people, and young people raise their voices up, right? It is not for the establishment.
They can do that anytime they want. They can do that anytime they want, but not during the school day when other kids might not agree with the agenda.
So do you think that the people who worked at Woolworths liked it when young African Americans and white children sat in? And they sat in the lunch counters?
Okay, that issue is not a relevant issue at all. But
not relevant. Look.
Yeah, we're out of time. I get your point. And I celebrate political activism. G2 and Chris, I celebrate political activism. I think it's awesome. And I think a lot of kids were excited and they think their voice. I get that. We're talking about the school day.
But that's not how you presented it. In your discourse, you are presented it as if
it's a political issue, and it's being pushed by political groups that have an agenda and Democrat politicians that want to drive turnout. That was my point. It's not all political activism. It's great. But this is a school day. Kids got to learn. Kids got a lot to do. And a lot of kids don't agree with it. And I think that's intolerant, to make all kids feel like they have to take part in this or they're not part of the cool crowd.
I know young people in Chicago that did not walk out, and nobody pressured them. Nobody criticized them.
If it were a conservative issue being pushed, I think a lot of people would claim they were excluded, and they felt like it was an intolerant atmosphere. That's why schools can't become political, because people disagree on these issues. They're very complicated. Constitutional law is involved. I was 12. I didn't know all that much about constitutional law, but maybe a lot of the kids today know a lot about constitutional law that I didn't know. Guys, great conversation. We're going to have you on for an hour. Thank you so much for joining.